Hi students, in the last video I talked about opposition to the New Deal and how some of this opposition came from progressives who felt that FDR wasn't doing enough, that he wasn't making the New Deal progressive enough. And perhaps as a way of defending his New Deal, beginning in 1935, we see FDR establishing a raft of new policies that are known as the Second New Deal. And these policies are considered notably more radical than the first New Deal. That these policies aim at establishing even more government, or even more direct relations between the federal government and the individual American citizen. And that these policies and organizations are focused more at social reform and social change than at economic reform and change. And so we begin with the Emergency Relief Appropriations Act, which at $4.8 billion was at that time the largest bill ever passed in peacetime. And this act allows for the establishment of the Works Progress Administration, which is another organization that provides federal employment to people who are otherwise unemployed, for low wages, but contributing to the infrastructure of the society. And with such a huge spending bill behind it, the Works Progress Administration becomes the largest employer in the whole country until it expires in 1943, so during World War II. Along with the Emergency Relief Appropriation Act, we have the Wagner Act, and this is building on previous New Deal reforms to labor. Remember that the Supreme Court had struck down some of these earlier measures. The Wagner Act establishes the right to unionize for all workers in the United States and establishes the National Labor Relations Board to oversee relations between unions and between corporations to make sure that, in particular, corporations aren't taking advantage of unions, which have been typically the way that abuse happened up until this point. So, more reforms to jobs, more reforms to labor, and now an even more wide-reaching reform, the Social Security Act. Social Security Act, which provided a federal retirement fund for those over 65. So this is responding to Francis Townsend's criticism that the New Deal was still leaving old people searching in garbage cans to find their next meal. Nevertheless, the idea of a federal retirement fund for the elderly was not new. It had been something that progressives had been arguing for a number of years up until this point. But the Great Depression and Roosevelt's presidency provides the opportunity to put this into practice. It establishes a federal fund for those who are retired and unable to work, and a federal fund for those who are unemployed. At the same time, it also provides funds which are sent to the states and distributed by the states to deal or to take care of those who are dependents or dependent families, perhaps where one parent has died, and those who are disabled and unable to work. And this remains the structure of the social security system today. It's seen as significantly more conservative than most Western countries, where funds for the elderly and funds for those who are disabled come directly from government revenue. So the government says, here's how much revenue we've got, this percentage of it we're going to spend on the elderly and those in need. The American system is more conservative because it's tied to taxation and employment. That for every employee that a corporation or an employer takes on, they have to pay a certain tax, and this tax goes into the fund. And so all employers are treated the same. So this is considered to be a regressive tax rather than a progressive tax that puts people in different bands depending how much money they're earning. And so these are some of the ways in which the Social Security Act and the New Deal generally, it's changing the relationship of Americans with their government, but not perhaps as radically as some of the changes that are taking place in Europe around this time and a little later on will do. The later measures of the Second New Deal provide money so that cities can build more affordable housing for low-income residents and provide loans for farmers who are struggling with the Dust Bowl or other economic difficulties, and also provides loans for tenant farmers to finally come to own the land that they've been working. So it provides a way for sharecropper farmers to come to own the land that they've been working. And so these are the ways in which the New Deal continues to expand the role of the federal government in the lives of American citizens.